Essop in this seminar. We are very, very happy to be able to have people gathering to discuss important ideas in teaching and learning. And my role, besides the traffic coordination, is fundamental to introduce you to Professor Richard Stevens, who is our acting DBC for teaching and learning, and who is going to present our speaker and introduce the paper. In terms of you guys to know how, I mean, some of you are familiar with the sort of structure of this, but I mean, Prof Essop, who is our speaker and whom we are very, very happy to have here, is going to speak for some 30 minutes, presenting his paper, and then we will have an equal amount of time to ask questions, etc. Please make guys, can you please, people, can you please close your mics? Thank you. And then you guys, I was saying, could have time to ask questions. What I will ask you also, please, is that if you want to put comments on the chat, do so. In that way, I will be able to bring your questions in. So without much more to say, I pass the torch to Richard to open the seminar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Liz. Then I'll be the second cop. If you are the one traffic cop, I'll just be your second. Dear colleagues, good afternoon. It's a great pleasure to welcome you here to the second Teaching and Learning Assessment Seminar for 2025, offered by the DLTE. As you know, we try to have at least 4 per year. And the whole purpose of these seminars is to promote the scholarship of teaching, learning, and assessment. And during these sessions, TLA champions, fellows share their research, innovations, and experiences about teaching, learning, assessment with colleagues. So the topic for this session, and I told myself in my head, don't misread it and say killing the fire. It is kindling the fire. So I luckily remember to say kindling the fire, transformative teaching and the decolonisation of medical education. And it's my privilege to introduce our speaker, Professor Faadiel Essop. And just for you who are not familiar with Prof Essop, his affiliation is to the Center of Cardiometabolic Research in Africa, CAMA, the Division of Medical Physiology, Biomedical Research Institute, BMRI, at the Faculty of Medicine and Health Sciences of Stellenbosch University. Now, Prof Essop is a professor and director of the Center for Cardiometabolic Research. As I've mentioned, he completed his undergrad and his doctoral studies at UCT, and thereafter, strangely enough and happily enough, a BA Honours degree in Arabic Studies at the University of the Western Cape. He was awarded the Chevening Fellowship at Leeds University of the UK, and he was a Fulbright Fellow at the University of Texas Houston Medical School. Prof Essop is an NRF-rated, internationally acclaimed researcher and is investigating the effects of chronic stress on human health. He was a recipient of the university's Teaching Excellence Award twice and is a Teaching Advancement at University or TAF Fellow. Prof Essop was former president of the Physiology Society of Southern Africa and the African Association of Physiological Sciences, and previous chairperson of the Research Advisory Committee of the South African Heart and Stroke Foundation. He is currently an elected council member of the International Union of Physiological Sciences. He is also a fellow of the American Physiological Society and was awarded the PSSA's prestigious Lifetime Career Achievement Award for Research Excellence. Prof Essop was elected as a fellow of the Royal Society of South Africa in 2023 and was recently awarded the prestigious TAF Fellow Award for his innovation in curriculum development, interdisciplinary work, and holistic student training in the medical field. If I can go over to the presentation for today. In this seminar, Prof Essop will reflect on his journey as an educator, scientist, and mentor, and exploring how transformative teaching can break down disciplinary silos and challenge traditional paradigms in medical education. He will be drawing on his experiences from mentoring high school learners in under-resourced communities to leading cardiometabolic research in Africa. And Prof Essop unpacks this with philosophy behind his pedagogy of engagement. So as the recipient of the 2024 TAL Fellow Award, Prof Essop advocates for education that goes beyond content delivery, fostering critical thinking, social consciousness, and a sense of purpose in students. In the seminar, he will discuss his innovative interdisciplinary initiatives, including collaborations between medical and art students, as well as his work of decolonising medical education through the Features of Science module. So grounded in the belief that science is deeply connected to society, he invites us to reconsider educators' role in shaping graduates who are not only technically skilled, but also equipped to be socially aware agents of change. This seminar offers insights into the future of transformative education, urging us to rethink how we teach, learn, and engage in academia. With that, Prof Essop, and we're looking forward to listening to you.
Thank you, Professor. Can you guys hear me clearly? Thanks
Yes,
very well.
Thank you very much to the chairpersons and the two cops. You'll have to just, I didn't time the talk, so please intervene and give me a speeding ticket if I go over time.
Don't worry.
So it's a great privilege to be here and to share with you this kindling the fire concept in a metaphorical sense, of course. And I hope to inspire and spark some passion and enthusiasm in terms of what we've done over the last while, so to speak. The briefing has mentioned many things. I don't think I'll be able to cover all of them, but at least some of them. Next slide. Yeah. Can you see the next slide?
Yes.
Yes, thanks. So I'm sure the audience, the esteemed audience, would most or all of you be reflective individuals since we're sitting here. And it's something that's very dear to my heart as well. The idea of being a critically reflexive practitioner. So to think in terms of our teaching and learning and assessments, to all the time critically examine the assumptions underlying what we do, and to think of the impact of those actions, especially in terms of student success and equipping them to go out into the real world. And then what would constitute good management practice. And to also be aware for me that our teaching is shaped by who we are, ultimately, what we believe, and other contexts, whether it be cultural, institutional contexts. And so highlighting the holistic, situated nature of being an educator. I've added on a little bit of philosopher there. Perhaps I'd like to view myself as thinking even a bit broader than just in the classroom or the institution, because for me, the critical reflexive lecturer is not only self-aware, as we've seen in the previous slide, but also should be socially, politically, economically aware, for example, and that we use such awarenesses to act ultimately with integrity, to act ethically, and to impart those values to our students, and view education then as a transformative practice. So that's my philosophy. So because of such wider thinking, when I drive into work, I'd like to think, what am I going into? What is my purpose? What is the purpose of a university? And so there's various definitions. This one speaks to me, Wendell Berry's one, that the thing being made in a university is humanity. So that we basically have to produce human beings in the fullest sense, and not only trained workers. It's not only about skills and about knowledge and the content, but as members of human culture. And another aspect that speaks to me in this definition is to bring together disciplines and to ultimately, you have graduates that are good citizens and fully developed human beings. So to have the great ideal in mind, for me, it's to cultivate individuals, students who can think critically, creatively, independently, but at the same time also act with compassion and empathy. I think that's crucial. To become change agents at the end of the day by contributing to a just and sustainable world. I don't know if this is still up to date, so the Vice Rector could take me to task here. This is the last version I've got of the teaching and learning strategy. We're in 2025 now, but it's something I took an interest in always. Graduate attributes, looking at the core strategic themes of the university, and that speaks to us today, would be networked and collaborative teaching and learning. So the idea to create, according to the university, learning communities where students and staff can experience meaningful learning. That's important, meaningful learning, and focus on partnerships where students are seen as co-creators of knowledge. And then the second one, a transformative student experience. So a unique, personalized student experience that serves as a catalyst for transformational change and to develop student graduate attributes, such as those indicated. So these are the ideals, and I love them. Inquiring mind, critical scholarship, engaging curriculum design, the way we deliver dynamic, and the well-rounded individual again. But are we achieving this, promoting meaningful learning? I think that's the question we've got to look at. So I was fortunate to attend this when I just came to Stellenbosch from UCT, a talk in the States given by this Stephen DeCarlo. I could sit into this lecture. And so he gave us a very inspirational talk and gave us an example like this. So if we look at on the screen there, questions and answers, it's Chinese alphabet numbers. If we give the audience enough time, we could memorize the answers. And then I could ask you a quiz later on, and you would be successfully, surely, to answer the questions. But would you know the Chinese language? That's the question. You'd know the answers, but would you understand the questions? You see, so is there meaning in this? Meaningful learning I spoke about in the earlier slides. And so I've got a favorite quote by the Greek philosopher Plutarch, who lived in the 1st century CE, that the mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be kindled. So there's the theme, you see. So, but at the moment it's about content more often than not. And so how to begin to change this? And I'm sure you're quite familiar with several of these, to look at reducing the amount of factual information that people have expected to memorize, decrease use of passive lecture, and helps students to become independent learners and problem solvers. So to promote meaningful learning, I also believe that it's not only what we know or the ability and the show we put up to impart the knowledge, but for me, it's crucial that that we stimulate in others the desire to know, in the students I'm talking about. So that the students, they construct knowledge actively, and learning occurs by exploration, questioning, and discovery. And that will to learn becomes an intrinsic motivation and not necessarily driven by other factors, assessments and so on. And for me, the cultivation of curiosity is also crucial because I'm a curious person by nature. So bringing all of this together and coming to physiology deals with the function of the human body. Anatomy is the structure. We deal with the functioning of all the organs and the systems. And there are a few big concepts in physiology. One is this known as homeostasis. So that's the balance as shown in that sculpture of walking the thread walk of life. So we live in an environment, there's external stressors, external changes, but we've got to try within the body to maintain a stable internal environment. For example, body temperature, glucose levels, blood pressure, and so on. So that's a big idea in physiology, the biggest idea. And then secondly, another big idea is integration and communication between various organ systems. As you can see, the highways and byways shown here through the vasculature system, the nervous system allows for communication between organ systems to ensure overall homeostasis and well-being of the organism. But we teach these systems as separate systems: cardiovascular, respiratory system, kidneys, intestine, and so on. So that's a problem sometimes in terms of integrating information for the students. This was a survey that was done in the United States. What makes physiology hard for students to learn? So they actually surveyed the faculty here. I would have liked them to also survey the students. But at least from a faculty perspective, and they had to rank them, would be the big problems. So I've pulled out, in terms of rank, the biggest ones. So one requires the students to reason with causality, to bring things together, cause and effect. How does it fit together mechanistically? Students fail to integrate, as I've mentioned before. They compartmentalize, it's related. And thinking that learning equals memorization of facts, so the content issue. And interestingly, the faculty themselves then mentioned that maybe they're talking too much, okay, and the students too little. But they put that, interestingly, at number 13 out of 70. So they didn't think that was such a big issue. Well, maybe it is, but at least it's on the list there. So you get the picture. We've got to move, as Ernst Boyer argued in 1990, that this is a Smithsonian Institute picture, 1859. That this approach would not sort of prepare students well for the real world challenges, for critical thinking, creative thinking, and lifelong learning. And that we've got to employ a different strategy or different strategies. So I did this full course then during Stellenbosch University, but of personal sort of sharing. And I got my first encounter with Chickering and Gamson's 7 principles for good practice in undergraduate education. And this really spoke to me because it gave me the tools then to try and correct the image we see on the left, which hasn't changed dramatically in 170 years almost now, plus. And so I was quite pleased. So that's one of the awards of sort of attending these courses. And bringing me to active learning, that we should look at constructivism and engage students in doing things, thinking what they're doing, and in the actual classroom. So I'll share a couple of sort of examples that I've done over the last years. But first at the undergraduate level, and then I'll go to the postgraduate level. So you can see the kindling of the fire. This is a blaze here, isn't it? So this was actually one of the slides I had up in class. So it's well before the talk. It's just by coincidence. So third year students, physiology, case study. Something happened in the airport, and based what we discussed in our classes, explain to bystanders what could be wrong with this person. And there's a focus on that, focus on normal and abnormal states, and what course of actions would you suggest, provide scientific reasons to back up your choice. So then we seek volunteers from the class. So it's a bit of fun and drama with the fire. And a couple of volunteers, they normally form a little group. They have access to the lecture, myself, and in those discussions, we prepare also for the presentation, and then they prepare slides and present it to the class. The rest of the class would write out a one-pager for their answers and submit it as well to be assessed. but not as a summative assessment. And so, for example, my engagements with the groups of students who would come to me for discussion would be, and to the class, emphasize this thinking approach. I called it the HWW principle. I like acronyms. So how does this happen? So for them to question themselves, their assumptions. What causes these issues, the risk factors? Why is a certain response initiated? Why is it important to know? And they need to explain this crucially to lay persons. So, famous quote that I still quote to my postgraduate students as well, that if you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, you don't really understand it. We can't hide behind complexity and technical terms. So that's the reason for the layperson issue. So the whole idea would be then for students to question their assumptions, to think critically about themselves, their actions, emphasizing dialogue and interactions versus a one-way sort of teaching passive approach. And rather than seeking simplistic answers, to embrace complexity and contradictions and try and work their way through this, of course, with myself modeling ways how to do this. And so they would present then to the class their sort of findings, and then the class would have a chance to engage with the presenters to ask questions. And it's quite a dynamic interaction. So it becomes quite a nice discussive, a polylogue almost between all the groupings there going on, and gaining deeper understanding of the concepts and its applications. Another example is the one that, so this is more like a CSI, those who, if you watched the television series a while ago, with mysteries and clues how to solve this. So 8-year-old Finnish girl visit Cape Town, missing Jonkershoek Valley 30 minutes ago. 2 Stellenbosch University physiology students are around and volunteer to assist to help find her. Okay. And so this slide would come up in class. So we're walking along the way, the class, and so we find some clues there. There's a banana peel, slice of bread, but CSI-like. Some little meter, 18.8, and with the cartoon characters, further clues. Okay, so at that point, there's a snack maybe, and my grandma uses this gadget as well for blood sugar. The class is given a chance to digest, interact, engage, before moving on to the next slide. Okay, so try and gain an understanding what's going on. Okay. Then we go into meaning after that, the following slide. What does that reading of 18.8 mean? So what does it mean? Can anybody help us? So again, the class now need to think. Again, engage a bit. After some time, the professor comes in now, and the professor then provides the physiology content. That if you ate those, the banana and the slice of bread, this is what happened physiologically. Okay, so that after 30, 45 minutes, there'd be a spike in your blood glucose levels to about 7. And then it decreases again after 2 hours. So they get the basic physiology content at this point. But there's also hidden clues in here, if you can see. So because the blood glucose levels would spike, so 30 minutes, it's about 7. And remember that reading was 18.8. So already something doesn't add up in this case. So what could that be? So then and that case goes on till the end where we solve the mystery. So I couldn't put all the slides in here today. I wanted to come to an analysis that was done subsequently, legitimation code theory analysis, LCT, work that I did with an expert. I'm not an expert in this, Dr. Hanli Arndorf, that allows you this LCT to gain insights regarding organizing principles, underlying knowledge practices, and their context. So you've got different, they call it dimensions. So we used an autonomy dimensions, A. And you can have this classed, you see. So PA would be positional autonomy. With a plus, it's strong. PA minus, positional autonomy, weak. So that would be the isolated constituents of our knowledge practices. versus others. So that would be almost, if it's physiology knowledge would be strongly PA plus. If it's another discipline, let's say the humanities, that would be in PA minus in this case. So that's one part. Then the RA would be relational autonomy. So the relations between principles from within the discipline, like physiology, with others. Okay, so it's almost the purpose of the learning task. So you can have in the quadrant PA plus RA plus strong physiology content and purposes and relations strongly related to it. So it's going to be hardcore physiological teaching and outcomes like that. It fall in that quadrant. And that's where most sort of people would operate within that. And it needn't be physiology, it could be any discipline. Okay. And then you've got the other areas. So this one would be not so much physiology content, but there would be some issues and context still relating to the teaching of physiology, but not as strong. The other top left quadrant would be physiology knowledge strong, but you're applying it now in a broader sense, in a different context. And the bottom one would have to do nothing at all, neither with physiology nor with its purposes and relations. It's almost a bit of exotic knowledge, so to speak. Okay. So that was the framework that we used. I hope it makes sense. Otherwise, I failed Einstein's test here. So if we apply this exercise to this, so we can map all of these things onto the quadrants. So you see in the bottom left quadrant, we've got the little bit of text at the beginning of the case study. So that was to pique the interest of the students, but it's got nothing to do with physiology and its outcomes, purposes. So it fits in that one. Then we move to the clues. If you follow to the right-hand side, just see if I can get the pointer. Yeah, this one here. We gave them clues, so there is some relation to physiology and purposes, but not hardcore information. But we've moved from this quadrant into that one. And then from there, the professor came in and gave that information, so we moved into the hardcore physiology domain, so to speak. And so we can go back and forth between these quadrants with the information back to the class back, and ultimately led to solving the case. I can read that it says now the little girl has been found. It's Kitos, it's Finnish. Rather, thanks that you managed to locate me. I'm Lena and I'm quite thirsty and hungry. I also really need a bathroom, please. So even with the mystery completed, there's a few clues there. She's obviously diabetic. And in Finland, you have, this is more prevalent there, type 1 diabetes because she's a child. And she needs a bathroom. So urination is an issue, frequent urination, and thirsty. So you can see there's quite a few sort of additional clues in there. So from this analysis, you see key steps identified. You help students apply physiology concepts by authentic scenarios. We repeat the same cycle multiple times, going across and between these quadrants. So the students begin to see relevance and application of these physiological concepts. And it helps deepen that conceptual understanding, meaningful learning. And the lecturer each time starts making sense of information provided, physiology concept, and then back to them. And they have these, we call these autonomy tours, that movement between the quadrants. And so you repeat this a number of times, and you release bits and bits of new information as it comes to light. And so in terms of assessment, this is a question I had in the third year level. So this was from an article, an excerpt, taken just like that. And then you've got questions flowing from that. A number, this is just a couple. Explain how and where. How. Number 2, do you think that the usage can level? What is your rationale? So you try and match these assessments also with your teaching and learning. So there's alignment between all of those. So I think we must focus also not only on sort of the knowledge we know, but to model the kind of reasoning, as I mentioned before a little bit, for the students, that they can see how we as the experts or the professors then approach, we become thinking mentors in a way. Difficult problems, how we evaluate evidence, ask deeper questions, because then they watch the social learning theory and observed. I call it by osmosis, such behaviors, hopefully, and they become better students from that. So that's the undergraduate level. I think now the postgraduate level, I've moved on. The chairperson can just give me a clue for time.
Sorry, you are fine, Prof. You got 6 more minutes.
That's not a lot.
6:25 to be precise.
If you could give me 8, perhaps. In any case, so this is the usual way that honors students were taught. They had course content, objectives, teaching and learning activities, assessment, if I taught on the heart. Then I thought with the undergrad success, let's try and change this. Okay, so I swapped it around. I had meetings with the students. What do you think would be the cardiovascular CVD risk factors? They identified this after many discussions. And then we made that the curriculum. And we had all our case studies and work focused around that. Okay, poster presentations. They wrote an integrative essay. So it's an authentic learning exercise. And I said, now we want impact. I'm going to go to the rectorate with this sort of outcomes. I'll show you later. So they identified these factors that's prevalent within the university and the town. See, very interestingly. And that became the course. And so they had to speak about personal experiences. They had to interview other students outside of science, get their experiences, and make recommendations to the rector and the students, what they would do. And so these were some of the suggestions. Okay. Mental health, smoke-free campus, etc. I emailed the rectors about this, gave them more than this, a full report. This is what our students are saying. What are you guys going to do? And I told the students, and I shared their responses with the students. So the idea, we're talking about transformative learning and that it can lead to social change. Now, I've got 5 minutes, so I must speed up. So I want to now move, I'm going to skip this, to some of the challenges at postgraduate level I thought that faces our graduates. Now we're talking honors up to PhD postdocs when they go out into the world. How do we prepare our students for this and our graduates? I felt there's a knowledge gap, that there's an elitism we're not concerned with, context, historical, social, all of those things, and I needed to fill that gap. So I devised a new module, Features of Science. This is the layout, and in there we've got racism and decolonisation as well. Okay? And so this was sort of grounded in critical thinking, self-reflection, a cultivation of humanity, Nussbaum's ideas. And so all of this put into the honors course. Okay, there we go. We had just discussions all the time. They had to do a reflective journal. They've never done that, a short essay and a group video as well. I've got the video. Maybe at the end, if there's time after questions, I can show you a clip of some of the videos they've produced. And these are some of the questions they've got to investigate. Race-based science, links between colonialism, modern Western science, and the entrenchment of racism, myth or reality, etc. Then I had another part of the course is they had to go and engage with the art students who I briefed earlier and spoke to them about the heart. They captured that essence and we had interactions and engagements between the two. And so this is some of the artworks produced, and this is some of the comments from the science students, the biomedical sciences. Okay, so you can see it's interesting there. The comment at the bottom, scientists should sometimes take a step back from the detail, allow more creative thinking, innovation. So they saw the benefit of such transdisciplinary interactions. Then in the curriculum, we do lots of things dealing with decolonisation. I'm not going to, time permits, but we go through where does race come from? The idea from way back. How the journals played a role in this to promote race. This is the New England Journal of Medicine's forerunner. that race, there's no equality of races. Darwin to eugenics, and the application of racial-based medicine where black and white with the same serum creatinine levels get different stages, different types of treatment at the end of the day because of race-based algorithms. And these are some of the questions that the guys have to discuss in their groups in class. So you can see it's quite tough ones, but they do it quite well. And some of the comments, I think it's important, racism brought feelings of discomfort, but there was a safe space. I could openly discuss, communicate about this. I learned a lot. Realize sometimes being put in uncomfortable conversations and settings is where growth happens. This is the video, but we'll come back to that. And then they like the module. These are all positive comments. I'm not going to go through that. I've got 2 slides, Chair. So to end off, how do we take this forward? I want to share and discuss this issue of medical racism as widely as possible so we can become all change agents, as I'm doing today. We need to look at policy guidelines in this context for research, talks, and peer-reviewed publications. We've got to expand these offerings within the university beyond Stellenbosch University, but it can't be dependent on myself. And then the big challenge is how do we bring some of these ideas now at the postgrad level into the undergrad curriculum? And I've got some ideas there we can chat about. I think this is the last slide. So I've published this book early in the year, and it's basically the curriculum of this module I've set up. So it's a useful resource, not for only us, but globally. And anybody interested in context in terms of science and medicine and the underlying context, the philosophies, and so on. I'm currently busy with a book volume as the chief editor that should dealing with decolonisation of medical research, teaching and practice by end of year to be published. And then I've got some questions at the moment that I'm thinking about. So to conclude, then I think I started with kindling a fire. So I think I've ignited a little bit of a fire using small bits of materials that's lying around me in my backyard. But now we're hoping that that would be the fuel for the larger logs to catch fire. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Professor, and absolutely on the dot on time. So thank you. Thank you very much. Colleagues, now it is your time. It is question time. I think that there are some very, very interesting material that Prof Essop have given us. So I hope that we can have a very good discussion. Prof, you might want to close your screen to stop sharing.
Okay.
If not, people have to have my face there. Yeah, that's better. Thank you. That one.
On?
No, it's came back. Okay.
I've got it, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, hands up for questions. Well, while people get talking about or thinking about what it is that they're going to ask you. Oh, there we go. Dr. Steenkamp.
Good afternoon. Sorry, my camera was not nice, but I loved your talk again, and I think I learn every time I listen to you. And I love this idea of the active learning, and you do it on so many levels. I do want to ask, and you know, this is a personal sort of challenge for me. Is I'm in physics, so it's really very far removed from humans in the sense that you study everything except the human. Would you maybe start to give us an idea of where would one start to bring this human and the social element into such a discipline, or how to link it up with, you are talking about interdisciplinary. Any thoughts on that would be lovely.
Yeah, that's a tough one, but I think one can think creatively. Physics. So can you have any, I bring in context, also historical context for the students to link it to the human. So for me, history is important in science and medicine, which the students don't like because I examine them on that. So if I talk, I'll give an example on diabetes. It doesn't start with Banting and those guys. So I'll go back in history as far as I can. The ancient Egyptians wrote on papyrus about this condition, the Greeks, the Indians. So there's two purposes with that. One would be to bring in the social component, even if it's historically. And the second one, that's actually a way of decolonizing sciences. Because physics, it's hard if we're talking about decolonization. You didn't ask me about that, but as a sort of side issue. Because you're showing there's other ways of knowing. It didn't start with modern Western science in the year 15 or 1600. That homeostasis the same. You go back, the issue of balance comes from a long way. So one is historical, I guess. The other one would be you'll have to think of case studies more, I think. Can you have something with NASA or something? There's a guy going to the moon or something happens. It's storytelling. I love storytelling. So you can see with So I think you've got to become a storyteller. In fact, I'll give you a funny thing. Last year, I asked my honors students, what have I taught you guys? It was the year in. I thought they're going to say something profound. They just said, Prof, it's the storytelling. So I think you've got to look at storytelling as a vehicle, perhaps, and build case studies and build into there sub-questions, perhaps, that would bring them into touch with reality. The astronaut experience X and Y. There is that movie, is it Interstellar?
Yeah.
That gravity thought. So you can use that as a nice, you can connect with them. So that's one way, but probably needs a bit more thinking.
You have given me ideas. Thanks.
Thank you, Christine. Any other colleague that would like to ask some questions, either in relation to this? Richard, go ahead.
Prof, thank you for that. I just wanted to ask, since all higher education institutions move towards, in a sense, compelled to look at students and their employability and sort of narrowed the curriculum to be, in a sense, outcomes-based and focus on employability, the sort of liberal thinking of when we studied fell away, that one had a much broader knowledge of society and you could basically learn everything. Do you think one should rethink how curriculums are designed to move away from this narrow focus, or do you think, in a sense, following on what Prof Steenkamp now asked, it would be, in a sense, artificial to introduce something into the curriculum for STEM faculties, for example, to bring a compulsory social science module in? Would that be artificial? Is it, or do you think there would be place for curriculum redesign?
That's a great question, thanks, and something I'm passionate about. I'm erring more on the side of a more holistic training versus the narrowing down and the reductionist approach, outcomes-based to serve industry, which is good, and society, but we also lose in that way, I believe, because it's a complex world out there, and a chaotic world. Some call it the post-normal world. There's contradictions, and so if we need to have our graduates a bit more multidisciplined and skilled to able to provide solutions like that. We need already to expose them, because if you're going to go outside and work, to multidisciplinarity in terms of teamwork. You may have social scientists, you have all kinds. I see even the NRF's latest call now, the latest one they made, it was a day or two ago, that they want these research clusters. It's not only more the single person, you got to co-opt others, and it seems also outside your discipline, which makes sense because to deal with the complexity. But I think I would like, it's difficult like in a physics setting, but perhaps in a first year setting for all science or whichever graduates you're going to look at, to do some of the things like I've done now. But with meaning, it must not just be an issue of lifestyle orientation, I think they call it at school, where the students see it like that. It must be thoughtful, it must be meaningful, it must be engaging, that we create thinkers. The problem at the moment, I think, Prof, is that we've lost that PhD, the PH a bit, the philosopher part. And we're training, because of the way the world is constructed, universities are forced on this. It's a systemic issue because there's higher imperatives that we need to do that, but we're almost just training technicians more and technologically orientated graduates, which is great, but they only know that one molecule. I see it in my own division. If I engage with them in a broader sense, they lost. So you become one-trick ponies. So that means you're not going to play a broader role in society. Actually, what's happening in the US is testimony to that. Because of the academic project, the guys were silenced. Here's Trump just challenging that domain. So how do you function in that world? Cutting funds. So now you're forcing the guys onto the street now to become activists a little bit. Because it's the ivory tower mentality, it's the silo mentality. I think that it's, in my opinion, crucial. I don't have the answers how to do it, but I would strongly argue for that, yeah. Because in my training, that played a role. I went to UWC, and I'm interested in far more than just, I can't just be a one molecule person, but I respect the other people. That's their choice. For me,
there are more molecules that want to ask you questions, Prof. Christina, are you wanting to come back again to ask a question or to put a comment? I see your hand up.
I just want to comment on Richard's comment, because we had a discussion with our postgraduates yesterday, and we were talking about this, and they said they want something. They want, so what we were discussing is, some years ago, there was in physics, there was a module called philosophy of science.
Absolutely.
We did philosophy, we did ethics in that course, and it was wonderful because you learned how science works and you can compare it in how it worked in the past and how it works now and what's fair and what's not fair. And our postgraduate students said, why don't we have this anymore? So really, and it should not just be on first year level, it should, you know, be in senior levels too. That's my contribution. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Prof Blow.
Thank you very much. Faadiel, thanks for presentation, as always, great. A very practical question, and that is time. A jam-packed curriculum, limited lecture time, and how do you curb the enthusiasm of the class to keep them to the core content? Because, for instance, in our profession, we've got professional board expected outcomes and we have to meet them. You know, you cannot deviate. So just practically, how do you let them go, but also pull them back?
That's a very tough question because, and so when I started at the main campus, I came from UCT there, and that was I was grappling with that at that time. There was the textbook and they showed me you've got to teach those chapters in X amount of time. And it was a squeeze, as you know, just to get through that. And then it's almost by default passive because it's the content. It's driven by the content. Then I went to the States and heard this guy's talk, 2009, and he said, he spoke to me at the personal level. He said, it doesn't matter. Don't worry about the content, all the content. But I'm coming back to your answer. It's more about the engagement that we should focus and meaningful learning. And you also said we should have fun, which I also believe that. But there's no room for fun in the model we've got at the moment because it's content driven. And in a profession, you need that. But so at the main campus, it wasn't profession driven. It was the BSc science students. There was the curriculum. I gave them a group assignment. I didn't mention it today, where they are to work in groups. And we took that through part of the course. But it covered a lot of the content, but in a different way than just lectures. And they had to answer questions and group work in class, 200-300. It was quite a project. And I give them feedback quickly and all of those kinds of things. So that's one way to do it. Now that I'm at the medical school, I find it harder, as you say, because I couldn't bring across those interventions here. Because now because there's guidelines now. So I'm almost I'm frustrated at the moment because I did all of that work and I can't apply it here because of time. So I don't have an answer at the moment. So
I will be at EMS tomorrow.
I think the
Guys, please, the mic's close. Yes.
yeah. So it's something I'm still thinking about, Renee, but it's harder in a professions bound. So I do have sessions where in class I allocate that whole session sort of to just active learning, where we have a bit of a case study, but it's not woven into the lecture. It's just a formal session. We're going to do this. They have a little bit of think, pair, share activities, and then they feedback, and then I give feedback. So that's about the best, but my hands are definitely tied more than where it's outside of the sort of strict disciplinary requirements.
I think we need to try and find the solution, because the skill of being able to communicate and explain your profession to others, in our case around the bedside, in a limited amount of time is a hugely valuable skill that we need to teach our students. But as you say, time and this huge curriculum just prevents us from getting to that. But we'll find solutions. Thanks, Faadiel. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any other question?
I was just thinking about the physics question, sorry.
Go ahead, go ahead.
One can also look perhaps then at sort of physicists that have done work, where has it gone right and where has it gone wrong in society in terms of the applications of physics. And one can share that and discuss that as a point. That perhaps it's the application of science also that can be problematic. That it's not, the finding is neutral, but the application can be harmful. You can get an atom bomb. So that can be the basis of a discussion to engage students, and you can talk about it, as you said, to link it to society as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think that if there are no more questions, we're getting to the end of it.
Is there time to show a clip of the video? Or is it?
Yes, and I really think that in relation to Prof Blau's comment in the chat, I think that there is something to be said about having a different conversation with the professional boards, and this goes across the professional disciplines. I think that something is changing in education and they are not listening to it. And I really, really believe that as universities, we need to have a different engagement. But anyway, that's another story. Prof, if you want to go ahead with your video.
Just 2 minutes, yeah, sorry.
Sure.
Let's just quickly, I'm just proud of the students of it here. They did. So I need to share it, isn't it? Share and the screen. Just tell me if you can see that, Prof.
It is coming, yes. You just need to make it bigger again as presentation level.
Yeah.
That's
so
great.
this was produced by the honor students, those open-ended questions, and they looked at race-based science so that people differ by, there are races. There's blacks, whites, physiologically, which is not true. It's a socio-political construct, versus race-conscious science, where you're aware of the legacy of the past and that there's a certain consequence of that. But it's not race per se. So race, there's no physiological and genetic basis now, the research is saying, but it's still you. So this is what I'll quickly show you a few snippets.
Does it have sound, Prof?
Sound.
Okay, for some reason that seemed to make
This sound not working.
No.
Okay, no, then it's fine. I think we'll stop it.
Thank you. I'm sorry about that.
Right, Prof.
I thank you so very much. I think it has been a very, very interesting and thought-provoking session. And I think that the questions and the issues that have been raised are also very, very important. I so wish that we could continue the conversation. Colleagues, please be so kind as to complete the evaluation form and what you want to say about the seminar. The videos. The question is whether there are the videos in YouTube. And okay, and then of course the video of this actual meeting that will be made available. Okay, guys, thank you so very much to everybody. Thank you, Richard, for introducing Professor Essop and being with us. And thank you to everybody who has come and made this possible. And thank you to my colleagues in the division who are helping.
Thanks
Good.
a lot.
Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody.